Chapter 69. Ah, it's so hot. But Fu Ruoqing never thought that Jing Yu would dare to treat her like this. She immediately fell to the ground from the hot tea. She covered her painful face in horror and screamed, "My face! My face! Ah!" The maid beside her was also frightened by Jing Yu's appearance. She looked at Jing Yu in horror and said angrily, "Impudent." "Impudent?" Jing Yu sneered and threw the teapot in her hand onto the table. She looked at Fu Ruoqing and her maid and said, "Didn't the imperial consort want me to serve tea? I did it and even gave it to her personally." Everyone below was stunned. They stood up and looked at Jing Yu in disbelief. They then looked at the imperial consort who was covering her face and felt a chill run down their backs. "Imperial physician? Summon the imperial physician. Capture this person who dares to offend the imperial consort." Jing Yu raised her hand and waved the guards away. She arrogantly raised her chin and said, "I can walk on my own." After saying that, he glanced at Fu Ruoqing with a cold smile. Then, he turned around and left in a natural and unrestrained manner. There was not a trace of fear or uneasiness in his heart. The news of the imperial consort's disfigurement at the tea party spread through the entire palace in an instant. When they heard that Jing Yu had splashed her face with hot water, everyone was stunned. In an instant, everyone knew of Jing Yu's name. They also knew that Jing Yu was actually the 9th imperial concubine chosen by the 9 emperors. That woman's face was disfigured? In the palace where the Empress of Phoenix Palace lived, a woman with a pale complexion heard the maid's report. She immediately sat up in shock and looked at the maid in disbelief. "Yes, I heard that her entire face was scalded." The maid couldn't help but smile as she looked at the woman. Retribution, retribution." The woman laughed as she stood up. She was the current empress, Fei Yaju. She had the empty shell of an empress without any real power or favor. "Your Highness, you should really go and take a look at Imperial Concubine Fu's current appearance. This 9th Imperial Concubine is truly formidable. She actually dared to splash boiling water all over Imperial Concubine Fu's face in front of all the young misses of the official families, causing Imperial Concubine Fu to be disfigured. That palace maid had been by Fei Yaju's side since she was young, and her name was Yun Xiu. The 9th Imperial Concubine? Fei Yaju's lips curled into a faint smile. "Yes, I think her name is Jing Yu. She's already been sent to the punishment hall to be interrogated. I don't know if she'll be able to keep her life," Yun Xiu said as she looked at Fei Yaju. "Humph, that slut Fu Ruoqing wants her to die? This consort won't agree. Help this consort get dressed. This consort wants to visit noble consort Fu at Jin's palace." Fei Yaju's lips curled into a cold smile. "Fu Ruoqing, whatever you want to do, this consort is going to go against you." Jing Yu was currently squatting in a dark cell. Her head was lowered and her hands were trembling slightly. The waves of pain caused Jing Yu to frown deeply. She raised her hands to look at her blistered palms and a cold smile appeared on her lips. If a tiger didn't show its might, did they really think she was Hello Kitty? Jing Yu sat on the floor as her stomach rumbled. She hadn't eaten lunch yet, so she was really hungry. Jing Yu was currently thinking about all sorts of delicious food when she suddenly heard the sound of the prison door's chains. She blinked her starving eyes and looked over to see a black figure walking over to Jing Yu with heavy footsteps. "Xiaochen, I'm really hungry." Jing Yu raised her small head to look at that familiar face and pouted as she spoke. Chapter 70. Xiao Chen's current mood could only be described as violent rage. The exquisitely dressed woman before he left the house was now sitting on the dirty ground in a sorry state. She looked up at him with an aggrieved expression. She was so petite and pitiful. They actually dared to treat Jing Yu like this. "Let's go home and eat." Xiao Chen slowly squatted down and extended his hand towards Jing Yu. Jing Yu smiled like a flower when she heard this. She looked at Xiao Chen's outstretched hand and didn't put her hand on it. Instead, she threw herself into Xiao Chen's embrace and wrapped her arms around Xiao Chen's neck. She said in a muffled voice, "I want to hug you. I don't have the strength to walk." Xiao Chen's body suddenly froze when he heard the muffled voice in his ear. His face darkened and he gently lifted Jingyu up. The guard outside the disciplinary hall saw Xiao Chen carry Jingyu out and his eyes widened. He thought for a moment and stepped forward. He bowed and said, "Ninth Emperors, the imperial concubine has ordered that she cannot be released. She has hurt the imperial concubine's face." Xiao Chen looked at the guard in front of him and coldly spat out a word filled with killing intent. The guard was so frightened that his face turned pale and he hurriedly retreated to the side. Jingyu turned her head and looked at the guard who had been scared out of his wits. She narrowed her eyes and said indifferently, "Xiao Chen, did I cause trouble for you?" "Yes, you did cause trouble." Xiao Chen nodded gloomily. He looked down at Jingyu in his arms and said, "Next time, don't make me come to the palace to pick you up. It's too troublesome." Jingyu was slightly stunned. She raised her eyes to look at Xiao Chen's cold and expressionless face. Suddenly, a strange feeling flashed through her heart. It was as if in this strange world, her originally impetuous heart had suddenly found a safe haven to rely on. It was just a simple sentence. But he indulged her. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen in confusion. She didn't understand why Xiao Chen would treat her so differently. They hadn't known each other for long. Jingyu never believed in the so-called love at first sight. She was also not narcissistic enough to think that the high and mighty Xiao Chen would suddenly take a fancy to a wild girl in her teens. "Xiao Chen, go find Imperial Consort Nyang. Jingyu suddenly spoke. Xiao Chen, who had just stepped out of the punishment hall, paused. He frowned and looked at Jingyu in confusion, as if asking what was wrong. "Although you don't find it troublesome, I still feel uncomfortable if you don't make things clear. Let's go find the imperial concubine." Jingyu looked up at Xiao Chen and said calmly. Xiao Chen and Jingyu looked at each other and confirmed that she wanted to go of her own accord and not for any other reason. After making a sound of agreement, he carried Jingyu onto the carriage and headed for Jin's palace. On the way, Jingyu was held in Xiao Chen's arms and didn't let go. Jingyu also didn't let go of the hand around Xiao Chen's neck as they headed for Jin's palace. When they arrived at Jin's palace, they found that it was already filled with people. The emperor, empress, and all the important concubines were present. When Jingyu and Xiao Chen arrived, there wasn't much of a reaction. Presumably, when Xiao Chen took Jingyu out, someone had already reported it. "Xiao Chen, you better give Jin an explanation." The emperor was clearly very angry. Jingyu stood in a sorry state in front of the crowd. Everyone looked at Jingyu's standing figure with measuring eyes. Chapter 71. Your Majesty, let me explain. Jingyu raised her eyes and looked at Emperor Xiao Yi indifferently. Her neither servile nor overbearing manner made everyone's eyes light up. "Explain? What's there to explain?" Just as Jingyu was about to speak, the curtains in the inner room were pulled open. Fu Ruoqing had already changed her clothes. The large robe made Fu Ruoqing look especially petite and pitiful. Even with the veil on her face, it couldn't hide the small red burn mark on her forehead. "Emperor, she offended this concubine and ruined this concubine's appearance. Shouldn't this kind of crime be punished?" Fu Ruoqing's eyes were filled with tears. Her weak appearance while being supported by a maid made Jingyu feel pity for her. "Imperial concubine Yang, do you think I would splash water on your face for no reason?" Jingyu coldly smiled as she looked at Fu Ruoqing and said, "You used the excuse of guidance to make things difficult for me and I endured it, but you didn't give up and kept making things difficult for me. Do you want me to continue enduring? I'm sorry, even a clay figurine has a temper, not to mention a living person like me." Jingyu coldly smiled as she looked at Fu Ruoqing. "Emperor, this concubine has been wronged." Fu Ruoqing's eyes were filled with tears as she bowed in front of Emperor Xiao Yi and said, "The 9th imperial concubine didn't understand etiquette and this concubine gave her guidance in hopes of correcting it." Who knew that after saying a few words, the 9th imperial concubine flew into a rage out of humiliation and splashed your hot tea on this concubine's face. "Jingyu, is there such a thing?" Xiao Ye's face sunk as he coldly stared at Jingyu. "Emperor, why don't you ask imperial concubine Yang what happened to the teapot first?" Jingyu coldly smiled as she stared at Fu Ruoqing. "Teapot? What happened to the teapot?" Xiao Yi frowned as he looked at Fu Ruoqing and asked. Chen Xie doesn't know. Fu Ruoqing looked up at Xiao Yi and said, Imperial concubine Yang Yang said that she was instructing me, but she secretly ordered someone to bring me an iron teapot to make tea. She also wanted me to pour good tea and hold the teapot firmly so that the tea wouldn't spill out. Imperial concubine Yang Yang, you're really good at instructing me. Jing Yu sneered at Fu Ruoqing, who was playing dumb. What? Xiao Ye's face darkened as he looked at Fu Ruoqing. The burn on my hand is right here. You'll know if I'm lying or not. Jing Yu opened her right hand indifferently. The burns on her small hand were much more serious than Fu Ruoqing's face. Some of the white blisters had already burst. How painful was that? Fu Ruoqing. Xiao Yi was clearly frightened by the burn, and he turned to look at Fu Ruoqing angrily. What? An iron teapot? Your Majesty, this concubine clearly used a porcelain pot. Fu Ruoqing looked at Jing Yu's hand in shock. Her expression was confused and shocked as she looked at Xiao Yi and quickly said this. Then what's with the burn on Jing Yu's hand? Did she do it herself? Xiao Yi waved away Fu Ruoqing's hand that was grabbing his clothes and said angrily. It must have been a mistake. It must have been a palace maid who didn't pay attention. This concubine really doesn't know anything. Fu Ruoqing lowered her head and looked like she was about to cry. Call that palace maid over. Xiao Yi waved his hand with a sullen expression. Jing Yu lowered her head and slowly put down her hand. Xiao Chen, who was standing next to her, had a very low aura at this moment. If it wasn't for Jing Yu stopping him from speaking, he would have already ignored this group of people and left with Jing Yu. It was her fault for hiding her hand behind his neck. Chapter 72. So it was because she didn't want him to see it. This woman, this servant knows her mistake. Please spare my life, Your Majesty. The palace maid trembled as she was brought in front of the emperor. She suddenly knelt on the ground and cried out, it was this servant's fault for being careless and taking the wrong teapot. These two teapots look exactly the same and this servant didn't know which one was the wrong one. You can't even take the wrong teapot. Someone come. Drag her out and give her 50 beatings. Xiao Yi angrily roared as he choked on his breath. This concubine only wanted the best for Jing Yu, but she treated me like this concubine. Fu Ruoqing wiped away the tears in her eyes as she spoke in a trembling voice. I don't believe that those palace maids who brought the teapot didn't notice it. If it wasn't for Imperial concubine Gui's tacit approval, how could they not say anything? Jing Yu coldly laughed as she spoke. A trace of anger flashed in Fu Ruoqing's eyes. At this time, the long-absent Empress Fei Yaju suddenly coughed twice. Her face was pale and she looked very weak. She pursed her lips as she looked at everyone and said, Your Majesty, in this concubine's opinion, let's just forget about this matter. Forget about it? How can we forget about it? Fu Ruoqing was instantly dissatisfied. She stared at Xiao Yi and said, Your Majesty, this concubine's face is already like this. How can you, Imperial concubine Gu, your face is your face, but this king's imperial concubine's hand is not a hand? Xiao Chen couldn't bear it any longer as he walked over to Jing Yu's side and coldly looked at Fu Ruoqing as he spoke. Fu Ruoqing's face paled. Seeing how Xiao Chen was protecting Jing Yu, her hands slowly clenched into fists. Why was she only injured her hand, but Xiao Chen was protecting her like this? She couldn't accept this. From beginning to end he didn't even look at her. Not to mention greeting her. His words were meant to protect her. Imperial concubine Fu, you didn't teach your servants well. When the 9th Imperial concubine's hand is injured, she accidentally splashed water on your face. You can't blame her. Moreover, the Imperial physician said that your injury is not serious. Look at Jing Yu's injury, it is much more serious than yours. Fei Yaju faintly narrowed her eyes as she spoke. Her gentle and calm words helped Jing Yu clear of all the blame with a single sentence. It was clearly her. Fu Ruoqing still wanted to speak, but Xiao Yi raised his hand in annoyance and interrupted Fu Ruoqing's words. As the Empress said, let's leave it at that. Xiao Yi stood up and glanced at Fu Ruoqing indifferently. Without saying a word, he flicked his sleeves and left. Fu Ruoqing was stunned to see Xiao Yi, who had always obeyed her, leave her behind and leave. Her eyes filled with unwillingness and she clenched her fists tightly. Xiao Chen raised his hand and pulled Jing Yu's hand. Looking at her scalded hand, his expression turned cold. It hurts? Jing Yu saw that Xiao Chen was about to touch it and quickly spoke up. Her small face was filled with pity. Xiao Jingran, who was standing next to Xiao Chen, saw Jing Yu's appearance and his expression changed slightly. He turned to look at Fu Ruoqing with a faint cold light in his eyes. Let's go. Xiao Chen lowered his eyes and let go of Jing Yu's hand. He picked her up in his arms and walked out of the hall. Jing Yu nestled in Xiao Chen's arms and didn't say anything. She raised her head slightly and looked at Fu Ruoqing, who was kneeling on the ground and watching Xiao Chen leave in disbelief. If Xiao Ye's actions just now made Fu Ruoqing feel unreconciled. Chapter 73. But now, Xiao Chen's actions made Fu Ruoqing unable to believe it. The 9th emperors, who had never been close to women, actually carried Jing Yu out of the palace in front of so many people. This kind of action was a huge blow to Fu Ruoqing. She had grown up with Xiao Chen and Xiao Chen had never been so attentive to her. The only time they had ever touched was when they held hands. Such intimate contact was actually with someone else. This kind of action made Fu Ruoqing's heart burn with jealousy and anger. Jing Yu, I definitely won't let you off. Xiao Jingran watched as Xiao Chen carried Jing Yu out and a trace of astonishment flashed through his eyes. Xiao Chen was actually so attentive to Jing Yu. This kind of thought made Xiao Jingran's heart feel strange. It seemed like there was another way to deal with Xiao Chen. Or perhaps, Xiao Chen finally had a weakness? Xiao Jingran pursed his lips and his eyes turned cold. It seemed like he had to send more people to pay attention to Jing Yu to ensure that he could deal a fatal blow to Xiao Chen. Following Xiao Chen's departure, Xiao Jingran and the other concubines also found an excuse to leave. Before Empress Fei Yizhu left, she slowly stood in front of Fu Ruoqing and said indifferently, "Imperial Consort Fu, your face? It seems like it won't recover for a while." The ridicule in her words caused Fu Ruoqing, who was on the verge of exploding, to immediately turn ferocious. She threw herself at Fei Yizhu without any hesitation and shouted, "I'll kill you." Fei Yizhu screamed and was instantly pushed to the ground by Fu Ruoqing. Her delicate neck was viciously choked by Fu Ruoqing. The maids beside her were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They hurriedly went up to pull the two apart. This terrifying matter reached Emperor Xiao Ye's ears. Fu Ruoqing was grounded for an entire month and the empress used this as an excuse to keep the emperor in her palace. Jing Yu was slightly shocked when she heard Yin Xiao's words. She didn't think that Fu Ruoqing would be so impulsive. However, she was even more delighted in her misfortune. Fu Ruoqing was grounded. Didn't this mean that she had a month to properly exercise her bones and muscles? Ow ow ow. Jing Yu watched as Xiao Chen removed the gauze in his hand and changed the dressing. She instantly made a big fuss. "Why didn't you yell when you were scalded?" Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and looked at Jing Yu. He frowned fiercely, looked at Jing Yu's frightening wound. "What should I yell when you're not here?" Jing Yu looked at the wound on her hand and blinked her eyes as she spoke casually. She completely didn't care how dependent her words sounded. Xiao Chen's hand that was holding the medicine suddenly paused. He looked up at Jing Yu. "What's wrong?" Jing Yu saw that Xiao Chen wasn't applying the medicine for her and blinked her eyes in confusion. "It's nothing." Xiao Chen lowered his eyes and carefully changed the dressing for Jing Yu. If Xing Yi and the others saw his gentle manner, their eyeballs would probably fall to the ground in shock. When did our cold-blooded master become so gentle? "It's done." Xiao Chen let go of Jing Yu and nodded in satisfaction as he looked at his bandaged hand. Jing Yu was slightly stunned. She raised her hand that had been bandaged countless times by Xiao Chen and her face instantly darkened. Wasn't it just scalded? Was there a need to wrap it up like a pig's trotter? How was she going to eat like this? It was also because of this that Jing Yu had been living like a pig for the past few days. Chapter 74. Xiao Chen, I want to drink water. Xiao Chen, I want to eat grapes. Xiao Chen, I'm hungry. Xiao Chen, Xing Yi and Xing Er stood outside the study with black lines on their faces. Hearing the ordering voice inside, they felt their entire being in a mess. They almost didn't dare to imagine their master working like a cow or a horse for the imperial concubine. In order to serve Jingyu more conveniently, Xiaochen actually let Jingyu into the study that no one else was allowed to enter? AI, so comfortable. Jingyu raised her hand that was wrapped beyond recognition and suddenly felt very satisfied. Looking at Xiaochen's hard-working appearance, her mood was beautiful. Jingyu? Just as Jingyu was immersed in herself, Xiaochen suddenly raised his head from a pile of documents and called out to Jingyu. Jingyu responded with a smile. The Princess Royal sent an invitation to invite you to the Princess Royal's residence to participate in the poetry banquet. Xiaochen picked up a red card from the table and handed it to Jingyu as he said calmly, "Don't worry." "What?" Jingyu suddenly widened her eyes and sat up. She took the invitation with her left hand and looked at it. What poetry banquet at the Princess Royal's residence? What the hell was a poetry banquet? Why was she invited? Jingyu suddenly wanted to cry but had no tears. She blinked and looked at Xiaochen pitifully and said, "I'm an injured person. Can I not go?" Xiaochen said faintly and raised his eyebrows. "You are the future 9th imperial concubine. The Princess Royal personally sent an invitation to see you because of the etiquette of meeting the 9th imperial concubine. This concerns the face of the residence. You have to go." Xiaochen narrowed his eyes as he spoke. "How about we discuss it again?" Jingyu asked carefully. Xiaochen said firmly. Jingyu wailed and lay on the soft couch, shouting, "I'm not marrying." Jingyu. Xiaochen's expression suddenly changed. He forcefully pressed down on Jingyu's shoulders. The anger brewing in his eyes made Jingyu tremble beautifully. She looked pitifully at Xiaochen and said, "I'm just joking, okay?" Xiaochen narrowed his eyes at Jingyu and said, "The next time you dare to say something like this king will cut your tongue out." Jingyu suddenly screamed and quickly covered her mouth. She looked at Xiaochen in horror. "The Princess Royal has treated me very well since I was young. I want you to see her this time because I want her to be a witness. Jingyu is my woman." Xiaochen slowly released his hand from Jingyu and stood up. He looked at the scenery outside the window and spoke faintly. Jingyu was slightly stunned. She looked at Xiaochen's back and slowly lowered her head. Jingyu said in a muffled voice. She turned around and rolled to the inner side of the soft bed. Xiaochen turned his head and looked at the cute Jingyu. The corners of his mouth curved slightly. He walked over and slowly bent down. He gently planted a kiss on Jingyu's cheek. "Tomorrow afternoon, I'll send someone to send you over." Xiaochen touched Jingyu's little ear and said. Jingyu's body stiffened and she responded in a muffled voice. She felt Xiaochen's breath slowly leave her body. She let out a sigh of relief. She raised her hand and touched her ear. She found that it was frighteningly hot. Her cheeks blushed slightly and she buried her entire face in the blanket. The next day, when Jingyu changed the dressing, she found that the wound didn't hurt as much as it did 2 days ago. She blinked slightly and looked at Xiaochen in surprise. "What medicine is this? It feels so powerful." Chapter 75. I remember that the first time you helped me apply medicine, you disliked this medicine? Xiaochen's hand that was holding the medicine paused as he looked at Jingyu from the corner of his eyes. Did I? I definitely didn't. You remembered wrongly." Jingyu laughed awkwardly and waved her hand. Her averted eyes were filled with guilt. Xiaochen took the gauze and wrapped his wound properly. He didn't say anything else. Jingyu sat in the carriage and arrived at the legendary Princess Royal's residence. Yin Xiao helped Jingyu off the carriage. When they stepped into the dazzling Princess Royal's residence, they were informed by the steward that the Princess Royal had gone to a manor in the back mountains. Jingyu had no choice but to ask the coachman to take a detour. It was said that the Princess Royal loved horseback archery. Her Princess Royal residence was located far away with its back facing a mountain. The back of the mountain was encircled with a hunting ground. Beside the hunting ground was an incomparably exquisite garden. This time, the tea party would be held in this garden. When Jingyu finally arrived, the manor was already bustling with noise and laughter. When they heard the announcement, everyone stopped talking and looked at Jingyu, who was leisurely walking in from the entrance of the manor. Their eyes were filled with curiosity. Jingyu's actions in the palace had long been known by these nobles. Today, they could finally see Jingyu's true face. Naturally, they couldn't help but size her up. Jingyu's body stiffened the moment she stepped into the manor. She walked to the front of the legendary Princess Royal under the gaze of dozens of pairs of eyes. The woman sitting on the high seat, dressed in luxurious clothes, looked to be in her 20s, but she was actually close to 40 years old. Because of the exquisite makeup on her face, she didn't look old at all. The person sitting beside her was the eldest princess's daughter, Princess Xiang. "Greetings to your highness, Princess Royal." Jingyu bowed and curtsied. Her jerky appearance showed that she didn't bow often. However, her posture was correct. "You must be Jingyu?" The eldest princess's name was Xiao Peibai. She was the emperor's eldest sister and also Xiao Chen's eldest sister. "Yes." Jingyu lowered her head slightly. "Come here. Let me see what Chen's taste is like." Xiao Peibai waved his hand at Jingyu as he spoke. Jingyu lowered her head and slowly walked forward, letting the eldest princess take a good look. She felt helpless in her heart. What was there to look at so close? "Not bad, she's a beautiful woman." Xiao Peibai nodded with a faint smile and said, "Come, since it's our first meeting, I don't have much to give you. This is my favorite pair of bracelets. Since you didn't wear any jewelry, I'll give them to you." "Many thanks, Your Highness." Jingyu looked at the bracelet indifferently. She was not interested in it at all. "Why give me a bracelet? Just give me money." "Really?" Jingyu did not dare to say these words. She only dared to accept the bracelet and thank her. She slowly sat down in front of everyone's envious gazes. She looked around and saw Shengguan Linglan and Ning Xiangyuan sitting not far away. However, she inadvertently saw Jingyu sitting diagonally across from her. That pair of eyes that made people feel uncomfortable were staring at Jingyu. Jingyu's face immediately darkened. The poetry contest continued under the flattery of everyone. The eldest princess seemed to really care about Jingyu. Just look at this poetry contest. When a few people started to talk about poems, the eldest princess would lead the topic to Jingyu. This scared Jingyu to death. After this poetry contest, Jingyu's head was about to explode. She worked hard to search for the pitiful few verses in her head. She was afraid that if she did not match well, she would become a joke. Fortunately, Jingyu casually matched 2 verses and said that she was not good at this. That was the end of it. Chapter 76. Eldest Princess Xiao Peibai nodded in satisfaction. It seemed like Jingyu had learned something. She wasn't someone who didn't know anything. Jingyu secretly wiped the sweat off her forehead. Hearing the eldest princess let everyone have fun, she finally let out a sigh of relief. She was scared to death. Jingyu drank a mouthful of water to calm herself down. Then she saw Shengguan Linglan walk over. He happily patted Jingyu's shoulder and said, "Not bad, the 2 lines of the poem just now were very well matched." "It's purely my imagination." Jingyu laughed awkwardly. How could she have matched it? It was completely copied from the 300 Tang poems. Luckily, she had trained on this subject in the past. Otherwise, she would have lost a lot of face today. "Why are you all here?" Jingyu stood up and looked sideways at Shengguan Linglan and Ning Xiangyuan. "We all came with our mother." Shengguan Linglan shrugged slightly and said. Ning Xiangyuan also nodded, indicating that she also came with her mother. Jingyu then realized that it was their mothers who brought their daughters. Now that the children were gathered together, the mothers were trying to worm their way into being friends with the eldest princess. "This manor is really big. Look at the blooming lotus flowers, they are so beautiful." Ning Xiangyuan followed Jingyu and Shengguan Linglan into the manor and pointed at the pond full of lotus flowers as she spoke. "It's okay, I have a lot of lotus flowers in my courtyard." Jingyu glanced at it and calmly retracted her gaze as she spoke. "Really? Next time, if I have the chance, I will go to your manor to take a look. Speaking of which, I haven't been to the 9th Emperor's manor yet." Ning Xiangyuan excitedly shouted as she spoke. "I want to go too." Shengguan Linglan looked firmly at Jingyu as he spoke. Jingyu was slightly stunned. Looking at the two men's wolf-like expressions, she tugged at the corners of her mouth and said, "Fine, fine, fine. Isn't it just an imperial residence? What's there to see?" "Oh?" The two of them cheered. They were already guessing what the legendary palace of the Ninth Emperors looked like. Jingyu rolled her eyes helplessly. As she was walking, she was suddenly bumped into by a servant girl who was walking towards her. The servant girl quickly bowed and apologized. Jingyu waved her hand carelessly and did not notice the strange look in the servant girl's eyes as she turned around and left. "Jingyu, look over there. That's the hunting grounds. I heard that the eldest princess often goes there to hunt." Shangguan Linglan pointed enviously at the encirclement of the manor. "Let's get one in the future too, a bigger one." Jingyu waved her hand generously. "That's right, let's also encircle a mountain. We can do whatever we want in there." Shangguan Linglan looked at Jingyu's expression and immediately said, "That's good, but where do we have the money?" Ning Xiangyuan blinked her eyes and exposed this bloody fact. Instantly, Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were stunned. They looked at each other and silently turned to leave. "Money, it's just money, ha." The two of them laughed as they walked away, leaving Ning Xiangyuan in a daze. In the end, she wanted to catch up to Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan, but she didn't expect to hear a strange sound coming from behind the fence. She immediately stopped and turned to look. The strange sound became louder and louder. Finally, under Ning Xiangyuan's astonished gaze, a striped tiger broke through the fence and roared as it ran towards Ning Xiangyu. Chapter 77. Ah! That earth-shattering scream made Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan turn around abruptly. They immediately saw the tiger pouncing towards Ning Xiangyuan. "Run!" Shangguan Linglan didn't hesitate at all. He immediately ran towards Ning Xiangyuan and pushed her aside. The tiger, having lost its target, Ning Xiangyuan, went straight for Jingyu. Shangguan Linglan hugged Ning Xiangyuan and rolled on the ground. His head hurt, but before he could feel the pain, he suddenly saw the tiger pouncing towards Jingyu. He was so scared that his face turned pale. He even forgot to scream. "Ah! Tiger! There's a tiger! The tiger has run out!" "Ah!" Panicked screams rang out everywhere as everyone ran in all directions. Jingyu finally came back to her senses. Looking at the ferocious tiger that was already in front of her, her expression suddenly changed. She hurriedly ran to the side and dodged the tiger's attack. However, she didn't expect that the tiger seemed to have locked onto Jingyu. It didn't chase after her at all. Its sharp claws fiercely pounced towards Jingyu. Jingyu didn't have any weapons in her hands. She couldn't fight against the tiger. She rolled a few times but still couldn't avoid the tiger's attack. "Damn it!" Jingyu panted heavily. The dress she was wearing was too restrictive. Just as Jingyu knelt on the ground and wanted to tear off the dress, the tiger pounced on Jingyu. Jingyu stared at the tiger pouncing towards her with wide eyes. "It's over, it's over. I'm going to die in the tiger's mouth today." This was probably the only thought in Jingyu's mind right now. However, just as this thought appeared in Jingyu's mind, there was a sudden sound of something breaking through the air. A silver-white sword was placed horizontally in front of the tiger. Jingyu only saw a blur in front of her. Then she saw a man in embroidered clothes wave his sword and force the tiger to retreat. "Jingyu!" Shangguan Linglan finally reacted. He suddenly opened his mouth and shouted for Jingyu. Jingyu didn't turn to look at Shangguan Linglan. Instead, she looked at the man who was about to fight with the tiger. The man's martial arts were extraordinary, but the tiger seemed to be on steroids. It went berserk. The man was too slow and his arm was injured by the tiger's sharp claws. The blood agitated, the tiger roared even more. Jingyu's expression. Jingyu's face slowly turned cold. Shangguan Linglan ran to Jingyu's side to see if Jingyu was injured. He didn't expect Jingyu to suddenly turn her head to look above her. "Lend me your hairpin." Jingyu didn't hesitate. She took the hairpin from Shangguan Linglan's head and rushed toward the tiger without any hesitation. "Jingyu!" Shangguan Linglan was so scared that his face turned pale. He didn't have time to react. He looked up and saw Jingyu suddenly jump up and hit the tiger with her knee. Obviously, the man with the sword was also shocked. Seeing Jing Yu's actions, his eyes widened in shock. Beast! Jing Yu's knee hit the tiger's neck. The hairpin in her hand pierced the tiger's neck, but it didn't go all the way. Quiet! Jing Yu stepped on the tiger's head. The tiger cried out in pain and knelt on the ground. Jing Yu pressed the tiger's head firmly. Her pair of cold eyes met the tiger's gaze in a corner where no one could see. Jing Yu's pitch-black eyes suddenly turned dark green. They glowed with a wild light. An irresistible command came out of her mouth. Quiet. Chapter 78. Everyone was frightened by the scene in front of them. The man with the sword suddenly remembered and quickly rushed over to kill the tiger. However, he was stopped by Jing Yu. Stop? The man was slightly stunned. Only then did he realize that the fierce tiger was panting heavily and lying motionless on the ground. It's fine now. Jing Yu sat down on the ground and raised her hand to pull out the hairpin that had sunk half an inch into the fierce tiger's neck. Ooh. The tiger whimpered in pain. It blinked its eyes and looked at Jing Yu with fear. Jing Yu slowly let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, she felt like she was about to collapse. The tiger was released and it opened its bloody mouth. Immediately, the vigilant man was shocked. He suddenly tightened his grip on the long sword in his hand. Jing Yu raised her hand to press the tiger's head and said, "Don't be noisy." Sure enough, the tiger obediently lowered its head and didn't dare to move. Suddenly, the man with the long sword was stunned. He looked at Jing Yu as if she was a monster. He turned his head and said, "You know the language of beasts? You know how to tame beasts?" Jing Yu was slightly stunned when she heard this. Only then did she raise her head to look at the man standing beside her. His dark blue robes were tattered and his starry eyes revealed a sense of alienation. His thick eyebrows were slightly furrowed as he stared at Jing Yu. Who are you? The two of them blurted out the moment they looked at each other. The words that came out of their mouths in unison stunned the two of them. A strange feeling flashed through their hearts. It was as if they were old acquaintances who had met again after a long time. There was a sense of familiarity amidst the unfamiliarity. Jing Yu, are you okay? Shangguan Linglan looked at the motionless tiger lying on the ground and thought that it was already dead. He hurriedly ran over and pulled Jing Yu, who was covered in mud, up and down. As he looked, tears welled up in his eyes. Do you want to die? This isn't a small animal. How dare you rush over like this? Shangguan Linglan's eyes were red as he roared at Jing Yu. Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglan's teary eyes and immediately panicked. She wanted to find an excuse, but she didn't know what to say. She could only raise her muddy hands to wipe the tears on Shangguan Linglan's face and say, "I'm fine. Don't cry. Go away." Shangguan Linglan angrily slapped Jing Yu's hands away and stared at Jing Yu. Suddenly, he smiled and slowly let out a sigh of relief. He raised his head to look at the man standing by the side with a frown. He stood up and bowed slightly. "Thank you, young Master Jing, for saving my life." Jing? Jing Yu also stood up and raised her head to look at the tall man in front of her. A strange thought flashed through her mind. You're Jing Yu? The man called young Master Jing had a strange look in his eyes. He looked at Jing Yu from head to toe. His fervent gaze made Jing Yu's hair stand on end. Oh my God, this handsome guy can't be interested in me, right? With that thought, Jing Yu immediately hid behind Shangguan Linglan with a look that said, "I'm not interested in you." She didn't dare to be interested. If Xiao Chen found out that she was hooking up with another man outside, based on Xiao Chen's temper, he would probably chop her into minced meat and feed her to this tiger. Young Master Jing, do you know each other? Shangguan Linglan was slightly stunned and asked with a frown. We don't know each other. We don't know each other. Jing Yu and the man said this almost at the same time. Shangguan Linglan's eyes widened and he looked at Jing Yu with a scrutinizing gaze. How could the two of you have such tacit understanding when you don't know each other? It's fine if it happened once, but why is it happening every time? Chapter 79. Jing Lang, are you all right? Just as Shangguan Linglan was about to speak, he saw two men hurriedly running over. It was clear that they had just received the news. Greetings, Prince Consort. Shangguan Linglan looked at the people running over and hurriedly pulled Jing Yu to pay respects. Jing Yu was slightly surprised and didn't say anything as she followed suit. Quickly get up. Are you all right? The man who spoke was around 40 years old and had an amiable appearance. He was the eldest princess's husband and the prince consort of Tokyo, Xia Weiming. We're fine. Shangguan Linglan and Jing Yu both took a few steps back and shook their heads. It's good, it's good. It's good that you're fine. Jing Lang is indeed a young hero. You were actually able to subdue this fierce tiger by yourself. Xia Weiming smiled with praise as he looked at the man who was standing in a sorry state but didn't look any different. This? Jing Lang was about to speak when he saw Jing Yu's gaze. Jing Yu was shocked. This person better not say that she was the one who subdued this tiger. If he said that, it would be over. She didn't want to be locked up by this group of ancient people to be studied. Big brother, you better not tell the truth. This tiger was a bit weak, which was why I subdued it. It can't be called a hero. Jing Lang looked at Jing Yu's shocked and pleading expression and revealed a faint smile as he turned to speak to Xia Weiming. Jing Lang, you're too humble. Xia Weiming laughed and looked at the tiger that seemed to have fainted on the ground. He frowned and said, this tiger doesn't have any attack power, right? Jing Lang was slightly surprised when he heard this and turned to look at Jing Yu. Jing Yu shook her head at Jing Lang, indicating that the tiger didn't have any attack power. Yes, Prince Consort should quickly tie this tiger up and send it to the hunting grounds to find out why it appeared here. Jing Lang lowered his head and said, all right, this Prince Consort will definitely give you guys an explanation. Xia Weiming nodded with a serious expression. Fortunately, no one died today. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the Princess Royal residents to escape the blame. Jing Yu watched as the tiger was carried back to the hunting grounds. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. Her legs gave way and she sat down on a rock at the side, unable to move. Jing Yu was puzzled. When did she become so weak? It was as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes slightly. She didn't think of herself as a delicate woman. She had been outside for a long time, so her reaction speed was still sharp. However, today, Jing Yu clearly felt that her reaction speed had decreased. It was very strange that her hands and feet felt weak. If it wasn't for Jing Lang's help, she would have been torn apart by the tiger in her current state. Are you all right? Just as Jing Yu was deep in thought, a question sounded in her ears. Jing Yu was slightly surprised. She looked up and saw that Jing Lang was looking at her with a frown. I'm not? Jing Yu wanted to say that she was fine, but she saw Jing Lang squat down in front of her with his back facing her. He slightly tilted his head and said, come up. I'm really not. Jing Yu was shocked and quickly waved her hand to refuse. Jing Lang's voice suddenly turned cold as he said, do you want me to carry you back? Sob, sob, sob. Why were all the men she met so unreasonable? Did they want her to live? Chapter 80. Jing Yu laid on Jing Lang's back. The warmth from his broad back made Jing Yu slightly absent-minded. She tilted her head and looked at Jing Lang's face. The struggle in her heart became even more intense. This man couldn't have taken a liking to her, right? Ahem. That you're called Jing Lang? Jing Yu coughed and asked. Jing Lang replied with a single word. His cold appearance was almost as cold as Xiao Chen's. Why did she keep thinking of Xiao Chen recently? You're Jing Yan's? Jing Yu's eyes turned slightly as she asked again. Jing Lang suddenly stopped talking. He silently carried Jing Yu to the place where the poetry gathering was held. When the group of girls saw Jing Lang carrying Jing Yu back, they all let out a sigh of relief. Xia Weiming also walked to the eldest princess' side and told everyone what happened. Brother Lang. Just as Jing Lang put Jing Yu down, Jing Yan quickly walked over and called out timidly. This immediately made Jing Yu tremble violently. Do you need me to send you back? Jing Lang glanced at Jing Yan without giving her any expression. He turned his head and asked Jing Yu, who was sitting down. No need. Jing Yu decisively refused. She pulled Shangguan Linglan, who was standing to the side, over and said with a smile, she's enough. My carriage is at the door. Jing Lang nodded and turned to leave. Jing Yan looked at Jing Lang's cold appearance and bit her lips slightly. She glared at Jing Yu with an angry gaze. Jing Yu blinked and looked back at Jing Yan provocatively. Look, what are you looking at? If you keep looking, I'll have to pay you. Jing Yu, you're really lucky. Jing Yu said coldly and turned to leave. Jing Yu was stunned for a moment. Looking at Jing Yan's back, a cold glint flashed across her eyes. When they returned to the prince's residence, Jing Yu almost fell asleep in the carriage. However, she was still woken up in a daze. Yin Xiao was really frightened today. She squatted beside Jing Yu and didn't dare to leave her side. Her red eyes were obviously from crying. Imperial concubine? Jing Yu opened her eyes and looked at Yin Xiao's appearance. She sighed and raised her hand to support her forehead, saying, "Your imperial concubine is not dead yet. Why are you crying? I'm so tired and hungry. Quickly go and prepare something to eat." Hearing Jing Yu say that she was hungry, Yin Xiao quickly agreed. Jing Yu jumped down from the carriage and walked into the residence. She felt that the residence was very quiet today. Frowning slightly, she didn't think much of it and turned to return to her own courtyard. After eating her fill, she took a bath and laid on the large bed. She narrowed her eyes and thought about today's events. Yin Xiao. Jing Yu felt that something was wrong the more she thought about it. She suddenly sat up and shouted towards the outside. "What orders does Imperial Concubine have?" Yin Xiao quickly walked in and bowed. "Don't wash the clothes that I just changed out of. Go and find a physician to take a look." Jing Yu sat cross-legged on the bed and said, Imperial Concubine, are you not feeling well?" Yin Xiao was shocked. She frowned and looked nervously at Jing Yu. I'm fine." Jing Yu frowned in annoyance. She glared at Yin Xiao and said, "If I tell you to go, then go. Why do you have so much nonsense to say?" Yin Xiao didn't dare to say anything else. She quickly asked someone to invite a doctor over. When she came back, she saw Jing Yu staring at her clothes that were covered in mud in a daze. She had a puzzled look and was mumbling something that no one knew what she was saying. "Imperial Concubine, the person is here," Yin Xiao said. Jing Yu then turned to look. Chapter 81. This commoner pays his respects to the 9th Imperial Concubine. The doctor carrying the medicine box seemed to be startled by Jing Yu's strange actions. He paused for a moment before hurriedly paying his respects. Don't kneel. Come over here." Jing Yu helplessly rolled her eyes. She waved her hand at the doctor and called him over. She pointed at the clothes on the table and said, "Take a look and see if there's anything wrong with them." The doctor was slightly stunned. He looked at Jing Yu with a tearless expression and said, "9th Imperial Concubine, this commoner is a doctor, not a tailor. Towards these clothes, I really can't see anything wrong with them." "What are you talking about? I'm just asking you to see if there's anything on them. For example, powder, spices, or something that can make a person feel weak all over." Jing Yu patted her head and pointed at the clothes as she spoke to the doctor. The doctor was slightly stunned when he heard this. He then hurriedly checked the clothes. "So it wasn't to see a doctor? How is it? Is there a result?" Jing Yu blinked her eyes and looked at the doctor expectantly. "Other than dirt and sweat, I didn't find anything else," the doctor said seriously to Jing Yu. Jing Yu's face darkened. She glared at the doctor and said, "You even found dirt and sweat? I'm not blind. I can see it. Hurry up and leave." Jing Yu angrily chased the doctor out. She stared at the clothes with a confused expression. Was she thinking too much? Or was she wrong? Jing Yu furrowed her brows. After thinking for a while, she still decided to ask Xiao Qin. "Where's Xiao Qin?" Jing Yu wanted to run over to Xiao Qin excitedly, but she was stopped by Yin Xiao. Yin Xiao said that Xiao Qin wasn't in the residence. The 9th emperors went out of the city to handle some matters. He hasn't returned yet. Yin Xiao bowed to Jing Yu and said, "All right, let me know when he comes back." Jing Yu sighed helplessly and went back to her room. She waited for a long time, but Xiao Qin didn't come back. Even Xing Yi and Xing Er were nowhere to be seen. She waited until night fell. Jing Yu yawned and couldn't help falling asleep. Half asleep and half awake, Jing Yu was sleeping comfortably. Suddenly, she felt a pair of hands taking off her clothes. Although it was very gentle, Jingyu still felt it. She frowned, wanting to sleep and wake up. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. But when Jingyu felt a chill, she shivered and opened her eyes. She looked down at her undergarment and screamed in horror, "Ah!" "Shut up!" A cold shout came. Jingyu covered her mouth and looked at the angry Xiaochen in horror. She couldn't say anything for a long time. "Why are you so? I'm only 14. Jingyu hugged her body tightly and complained to Xiaochen. "What dirty things are in your head?" Xiaochen's face darkened. He looked coldly at Jingyu and said, "You were attacked today? Let me see if you're injured." "You took off my clothes to see if I'm injured?" Jingyu was slightly stunned. She blinked and asked Xiaochen. Xiaochen replied indifferently. He lowered his eyes and said, "I only found out when I came back." "Sorry." Xiaochen's breathing paused as he spoke. He bent over and stared at Jingyu. His apologetic eyes made Jingyu's heart tremble. She pursed her lips and lowered her head, not daring to look at Xiaochen. Chapter 82. I'm not injured. Jingyu lowered her eyes and said, "Next time, if you want to know if I'm injured, just wake me up and ask." Who would take off someone's clothes in the middle of the night? Jingyu's cheeks turned slightly red as she spoke. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at Xiaochen. "Are you shy?" Xiaochen's lips curled into a faint smile as he raised his hand to press down on Jingyu's head. "I'm not." Jingyu's face turned red as she raised her head to deny it. However, when she met Xiaochen's smiling eyes, her cheeks turned even redder. She hurriedly pulled the blanket over her head and said in a muffled voice, "Time to sleep." Xiaochen looked at Jingyu, who was still as energetic as ever, and slowly let out a sigh of relief. The fear he felt when he heard that Jingyu had been attacked slowly dissipated. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be so worried about someone without realizing it. At this moment, Xiaochen realized that there was something strange about himself. He was actually afraid of losing Jingyu. Why was that? Xiaochen's eyes were filled with doubt. He never thought that he would lose himself for a woman. There was nothing that he couldn't give up. Wealth, power, and women had never mattered to him. However, when he heard that Jingyu had been attacked after returning to the city today, he felt as though he had lost something very important in an instant. It terrified him. He was terrified. Although it was a very light feeling, it was enough for Xiaochen to feel. That night, Xiaochen couldn't sleep for a long time. He frowned as he looked at Jingyu's sleeping face. They had only known each other for a few days, so why did he have such a strange thought? Xiaochen sighed softly as he raised his hand to hug Jingyu. That familiar scent entered Xiaochen's nose, causing him to greedily move closer to her. In the morning, Jingyu stretched lazily and opened her eyes. The moment she saw Xiaochen's eyes, she was slightly stunned. Even though she had slept with Xiaochen for so long, Jingyu still felt that Xiaochen was really handsome. Gulp. Jingyu swallowed her saliva as she stared at Xiaochen and said, "Let me interview you. How do you feel about being so handsome since you were young?" "Handsome? What?" Xiaochen frowned as he looked at Jingyu in confusion. "That is to say that you're very good-looking and handsome." Jingyu's eyes turned slightly as she explained. "So you're saying that I'm very good-looking?" Xiaochen's lips curled into a happy smile as he propped his head up and looked at Jingyu with a smug look on his face. "That get up." Jingyu waved her hands wildly with a slightly embarrassed expression. How come she didn't know that Xiaochen could be narcissistic? Jingyu was about to run off the bed as she spoke, but when she stepped over Xiaochen, she tripped over Xiaochen and fell straight into his arms. Xiaochen wrapped his arms around Jingyu and hugged her tightly. He flipped over and pressed down on top of her. When he saw the shocked expression on Jingyu's face, there was a hint of amusement in his eyes. "You don't have to go to school today. Why are you in such a hurry?" Xiaochen's finger lightly touched Jingyu's cheek as he spoke with narrowed eyes. "But I want to go shopping." Jingyu's eyes turned as she looked at Xiaochen. "There's no hurry. It's still early." Xiaochen narrowed his eyes as he looked at Jingyu's embarrassed expression. He lowered his head and buried it in Jingyu's neck as he said in a calm voice, I'll have Xing Er stay by your side. He'll be responsible for your safety in the future. I don't want to see what happened yesterday ever again. Chapter 83. Jing Lang saved me yesterday. Do you know him? Jing Yu's body stiffened slightly as she felt the scorching breath on her neck. Her body was so stiff that she didn't dare to move. Jing Lang? Xiao Cheng raised his head and looked at Jing Yu with furrowed brows. He actually came back to the capital? Emichem? You know him? Jing Yu blinked and looked at Xiao Chen as she asked. For some reason, Jing Yu felt a sense of familiarity with Jing Lang. This feeling made Jing Yu want to know more about this person. He is Jing Zhan's son. If it wasn't for Jing Lang, Jing Zhan might have already been killed by the second master of the Prime Minister Manor. Xiao Chen propped himself up and sat up. Turning his eyes slightly, he looked at Jing Yu and said, Jing Lang is at the North Gate. He is a general in charge of the 3 armies. General? Jing Yu's eyes widened. She also sat up and said in surprise. Thinking of Jing Lang's appearance, he didn't look like a general at all. He looked more like, what was he? Jing Yu didn't know. Jing Lang went to the battlefield when he was 10 years old. He fought for over 10 years and sat on the position of general. He guarded the North Gate and was in charge of the 3 armies. This time, he suddenly came back to the capital. I'm afraid he came back for the matter of the Crown Prince. Xiao Chen got off the bed and picked up the outer robe on the screen to put it on. Over 10 years. Jing Yu's eyes showed a faint surprise. Hugging her knees, she watched Xiao Chen put on his clothes and asked, Then he hasn't come back to the capital in over 10 years? Then what about his father? Who didn't know Jing Zhan's name over 10 years ago? Although his legs are crippled now, he is not a cripple. He has been in the capital for so long and has no intention of retreating. The second master of the Prime Minister Manor has been fighting for the position of master for over 10 years, but he is still only a substitute master. Xiao Chen buckled his belt and said indifferently, Wow, it sounds amazing. Jing Yu blinked her eyes in surprise. But why are you suddenly so interested in the Jing family? Xiao Chen frowned unhappily as he looked at Jing Yu. Jing Yu was slightly flustered by Xiao Chen's scrutinizing gaze and hurriedly said, That person saved me, so I have to know who that person is. Hearing this, Xiao Chen slowly turned his gaze away. He clasped his hands behind his back and stared at Jing Yu as he said, I will send someone to investigate what happened yesterday. If you want to go out, bring more guards with you. I will be very busy in the next few days. If you want to find me, ask Xing Er to find me. Oh. Jing Yu blinked and nodded at Xiao Chen. Remember to miss me. Xiao Chen bent down and gently planted a kiss on Jing Yu's lips. There was a faint joy in his eyes. He didn't care about the petrified Jing Yu as he turned and strode away. But just now, was I being teased? Jing Yu blinked and covered her face. When Jing Yu finished washing up and went out, she saw Xing Er standing at the entrance of Jing Yu's room with a long sword in his hand. That expressionless face made Jing Yu's good mood instantly disappear. Why did she have to bring this blockhead out with her? Imperial concubine, where are we going? Yin Xiao followed closely beside Jing Yu. Looking at the bustling street, she was afraid that Jing Yu would disappear if she wasn't careful, so she asked nervously. I don't know. Let's play. Jing Yu shrugged and said generously. Chapter 84. Yin Xiao's face instantly turned bitter. Oh right, did you bring any money? Jing Yu suddenly stopped in her tracks and asked while looking at Yin Xiao and second Xing. Yin Xiao blinked slightly and shook her head. Xing Er just stared at Jing Yu in a daze. This made Jing Yu start to suspect that this Xing Er didn't even know what money was. AI? Jing Yu held her chin and sat on the stone embankment by the river. She swung her legs and sighed as she looked at the ripples in the water. She turned to look at Xing Er, who was standing there like a block of wood, and asked, Did Yin Xiao come back? Xing Er shook his head. I should have let you go get the money. You didn't say anything for half a day. I was bored to death. Jing Yu glared at Xing Er angrily. Xing Er felt wronged. Master had strictly forbidden him from having any intimate contact with the imperial concubine. If he could speak less, then he shouldn't. He just had to protect the imperial concubine. Right now, he was perfectly carrying out his master's orders. He wasn't slacking off at all. Jingyu looked at Xing Er, who didn't even change his expression, and instantly got angry. She stood on the stone embankment and angrily pointed at Xing Er and said, "I don't believe that I won't make you laugh today." Jingyu grimaced and made funny faces at Xing Er. She looked like she was having a seizure. Jingyu was tired to death, but Xing Er still didn't move at all. Xing Er looked at Jingyu and silently said in his heart, "Master, quickly send the imperial concubine to the insane prison. I can't take it anymore." Jingyu? Just as Jingyu was about to give up, a shout suddenly came from behind her. Jingyu turned around in confusion and forgot that she was still standing on the stone embankment. She stepped on air and fell into the lake. Imperial concubine? Second interrogation officer's eyes trembled. He abruptly reached out and grabbed Jingyu's hand, forcefully pulling it back. He took 2 steps back and looked at the shocked Jingyu in his arms. He slowly breathed a sigh of relief and let go of her hand. Lowering his head, he said, "Sorry for offending you. Your reaction is fast enough." Jingyu slowly let out a sigh of relief and happily patted Xing Er's shoulder as she spoke. "Jingyu, are you okay?" A familiar voice was heard. Jingyu finally saw the person who was walking over with a frightened expression. It was Fang Zicheng. "Jinglang? I'm fine. What? Are you guys here?" Jingyu blinked and asked Fang Zicheng and Jinglang. "Jinglang and I haven't seen each other in a long time, so we agreed to meet today. I didn't expect to see you here." Fang Zicheng looked Jingyu up and down. After confirming that Jingyu wasn't injured, he slowly let out a sigh of relief. He looked at Jingyu and then at the stone embankment with a look of blame in his eyes. "How dare you stand on that stone embankment? You really don't care about your own safety," Fang Zicheng reprimanded. I'm fine." Jingyu stuck out her tongue and looked at Fang Zicheng and Jinglang. "Where did you two want to go? Take me with you, I'm bored to death." "We're going to Jinyan restaurant. Are you coming too?" Fang Zicheng looked at Jingyu and blinked. "Jinyan restaurant? A place to eat?" Jingyu's eyes lit up when she heard this. "Hey, don't tell me you don't have money to eat again?" Fang Zicheng looked at Jingyu's hungry face and suddenly widened his eyes in horror. How many times has it been? Watching Jingyu freeload every day. Chapter 85. Jingyu looked at Fang Zicheng and said seriously, "Cough, cough, cough. That, my maid went back to get the money, but I think she must have gotten lost." Xing Er inexplicably felt that today was definitely the most embarrassing day of his life. This was the first time Jingyu had been to the Jinyan restaurant. Seeing the magnificent decorations, Jingyu couldn't help but sigh at the domineering style of the ancient architects. They were actually able to decorate this place so beautifully. "Tsk, this is a good place." Jingyu couldn't help but look around. The exquisite decorations, the beautiful gauze hanging from the roof beams, the sound of bamboo flutes coming from the loft, and the ladies sitting upright and playing the zither. Which one of them wasn't a peerless beauty? Wow, what a beautiful lady. Jingyu looked at the beautiful lady holding the pipa and singing. Her lecherous eyes made Xing Er want to throw Jingyu out. Let's go in." Fang Zicheng practically dragged Jingyu into the private room. After entering the private room, he wiped the sweat from his forehead. This lady was simply too eye-catching. Every time he was with Jingyu, Fang Zicheng wanted to cry but had no tears. Was she really a woman? Hey, how about we also get a beauty to sing for us? Jingyu looked at the isolated door and blinked her eyes as she looked at Fang Zicheng and said excitedly, "No." Fang Zicheng didn't even think about it and immediately rejected her. "But, don't you like beautiful ladies?" Jingyu looked at Fang Zicheng unhappily. Seeing Fang Zicheng's slightly red cheeks, her eyes suddenly lit up. She carefully moved to Fang Zicheng's side and asked, "Don't tell me you have a homosexual fetish?" Jinglang suddenly spat out the tea in his mouth and looked at Jingyu in horror. "Oh my God! Don't tell me the two of you!" Jingyu looked at Jinglang, who instantly burst out laughing, and then looked at Fang Zicheng, who was completely dumbfounded. She immediately revealed an expression that said, "See, I guessed it right. She smiled ambiguously at the two of them, revealing an expression that said, I knew it. Fang Zicheng's face was getting redder and redder. He didn't know if it was because of anger or something else, but he couldn't say anything for a long time. You think too much. I don't like men. Jing Lang forcefully suppressed his surging desire and spoke to Jing Yu with a serious expression. Could it be your unrequited love? Jing Yu suddenly turned her head to look at Fang Zicheng and said with pity, I can understand how it feels when the man you like doesn't like you back. It's okay, you'll find a better man in the future. My condolences. Jing Yu. Fang Zicheng suddenly stood up and stared angrily at Jing Yu as he said, if you continue to speak nonsense and ruin my reputation, get out. Ayaya. I just said it casually. I was joking. When Jing Yu saw that Fang Zicheng was angry and wanted to chase her away, she thought that she hadn't eaten yet. She hurriedly smiled at Fang Zicheng in a flattering manner, feeling like she was apologizing. Come, have some tea. Jing Yu poured tea for Fang Zicheng like a lackey and served Fang Zicheng like a lord. Fang Zicheng looked at Jing Yu and snorted as he picked up the tea and drank it. After the dishes were served, Jing Lang saw for the first time that a woman could eat a man's domineering aura. Chapter 86. After the dishes were served, Jing Lang realized for the first time that a woman could emit a man's domineering aura while eating. Look at the way Jing Yu ate. She didn't look like a woman at all. Her sleeves were rolled up, and her mouth was wide open. It was as if she hadn't eaten in hundreds of years. Jing Lang was dumbstruck and completely forgot to eat. Is your prince's estate very poor? Jing Lang asked as he stared blankly at Xing Er, who was standing behind Jing Yu. How embarrassing! Xing Er silently turned his head away, as if he didn't want to see Jing Yu. The food in Jinyan restaurant is really good. It's delicious. Jing Yu rubbed her round belly in satisfaction. She looked at Xing Er with a smile and said, Go back and ask Xiao Chen if we can invite the chef of Jinyan restaurant to our home. Xing Er was slightly surprised, but he actually spoke. Damn, you actually spoke. Jing Yu suddenly jumped up in excitement. Fang Zicheng slowly wiped his mouth. He blinked and looked at Xing Er, then turned his head to look at Jing Yu and asked, Could it be that he didn't know how to speak before? He didn't. Jing Yu shook her head in all seriousness. He did? Xing Er silently spat out a word. Suddenly, the entire private room fell into a short silence. Aya. He said another word. It's not easy, it's not easy. Jing Yu looked as if she had seen a treasure. She looked at Second Xing and sighed. Second Xing silently lowered his head and stood in the corner without saying anything. Fang Zicheng looked at the two of them and laughed out loud. Jing Yu, you're really too interesting. Fang Zicheng laughed. Jing Yu glared at Fang Zicheng. She turned around and leaned against the windowsill, looking at the people coming and going below without saying a word. It was rare for Jing Yu to be quiet. Only then did Fang Zicheng and Jing Lang start to talk. At first, they just asked about the recent situation. Those polite words made Jing Yu yawn. This feeling of wanting to sleep after eating was really hopeless. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and looked at the street below. Just as she was wondering if she could see a handsome guy, her sharp ears overheard the conversation between Fang Zicheng and Jing Lang. Is there still no news of your sister? Fang Zicheng asked, holding the teacup in his hand. Jing Lang's eyes dimmed slightly as he lowered his head. It's been 14 years. Could he have died in the stomach of a wild beast? Fang Zicheng asked with a sigh. No, she must be alive. Jing Lang clenched his fists and said, I will find her. It's been 14 years. Why are you so persistent? Fang Zicheng pursed his lips and looked at Jing Lang. Zicheng, she is my biological sister. We finally found my mother's body after her death, but we didn't find my sister's body. My mother must have hidden her. No matter what, I have to find her. Jing Lang looked at Fang Zicheng with a burning gaze. What if your sister is really dead? Jing Yu's sudden interruption stunned Jing Lang. He then looked at Jing Yu and said firmly, If she is alive, I want to see her. If she is dead, I want to see her body. Jing Yu pursed her lips and lowered her head. She tilted her head and continued to look out the window. Your sister? Where was she abandoned? Roman forest. Jing Lang looked at Jing Yu's back and said, Why did you abandon her? Jing Lang couldn't see Jing Yu's expression clearly. He could only hear Jing Yu's calm words. Chapter 87. Jing Lang took a deep breath and said, her parents were being hunted down. In order to save her life, they had no choice but to hide her. How unforgivable, abandoning their own child. Jing Yu slowly stood up and said calmly, even if they had to die together, they couldn't abandon their own child. How can you say that? That was to save her life. Jing Lang's expression turned cold as he stared at Jing Yu. So what if they saved her life? Let her fend for herself outside for 14 years? Didn't she know that her parents were being laughed at as bastards? That she had no one to talk to about her grief? That she had to suffer alone in the cold? That she had to bear her own injuries and tears? What was the point of saving her life like that? She might as well follow her parents to the Yellow Springs. As soon as Jing Yu finished speaking, Jing Lang felt a sudden pain in his heart. He raised his eyes and met Jing Yu's pair of icy cold eyes that were filled with alienation. A look of panic flashed across his eyes. You don't have to look for them. If I were her, even if I was alone, I would never acknowledge a father and brother that suddenly appeared. Jing Yu turned around and walked towards the door of the pavilion. Without hesitation, she opened the door and strode out. Xing Er's eyes flashed. He glanced at Jing Yu and followed Jing Yu's footsteps down the stairs. Inside the pavilion, Jing Lang fell silent. Jing Yu's words reverberated in his ears, causing him to feel a dull pain in his heart. He was so focused on finding his sister that he had neglected such an important matter. Yes, if she had really survived these 14 years, how would she have lived through it? Would she have thought that her parents had abandoned her and developed resentment in her heart? Zicheng, what should I do? Jing Lang lowered his head and stared blankly at the table. Perhaps Jing Yu is right? Fong Zicheng sighed silently. He wondered why Jing Yu had such a big reaction when she heard this. While comforting Jing Lang in a low voice, he called for several jars of fine wine, and the two of them would not return until they were drunk. Jing Yu was exceptionally silent on the way back to the mansion. Xing Er silently followed beside her. His lips moved slightly as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't open his mouth. He just watched as Jing Yu walked back to the mansion with her head lowered. Jing Yu walked into her room. Xing Er opened his mouth slightly and was about to tell her to call him if she needed anything. Unexpectedly, Jing Yu turned around and closed the door. She said in a muffled voice, I don't want to eat dinner. Don't disturb me. Second interrogation officer blinked, looking at the tightly shut door and furrowing his brows. This kind of situation. Should he report it to his master? Jing Yu curled up on the bed with a pair of soulless eyes. Her mind was filled with countless chaotic thoughts. Everything from her previous life flashed through her mind. She was abandoned by her parents on the streets. She slept in the garbage and ate spoiled and moldy food. She was beaten by people and fought with dogs for food. She cried, screamed, and begged. In the end, she was still alone. Once, she met a policeman by accident and was sent to an orphanage. It was also after that she stepped on a path of no return. Jing Yu closed her eyes tightly. These thoughts were sealed in her memory forever. She didn't want to think about them. She thought that her current life would be the same as her previous life. She was abandoned and had no parents. She didn't expect. Chapter 88. Jing Yu chuckled. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt her nose tingle. Jing Yu sat up and sighed softly. It's been a long time since I went to see Jian and Yin Feng. Jing Yu stood up and got off the bed. When she opened the door, she realized that there was no one there. Yin Xiao wasn't there, and neither was Xing Er. She was stunned for a moment, but didn't think too much about it. She turned around and went to the side courtyard. Sure enough, she saw Yin Jian and Yin Feng playing around. Two bad guys. Jing Yu laughed and scolded them. She quickly ran over and played with the two gray wolves, rolling around on the grass to her heart's content. As the night deepened, Jingyu leaned on Yin Jian's back and closed her eyes. She sniffed the smell of the soil and grass. In a trance, she seemed to have returned to the forest. She played around without any worries and flew around every corner of the forest. Jingyu buried her face and rubbed against Yin Feng's soft fur. The corners of her mouth curled up and she closed her eyes comfortably. Yin Jian moved his body and laid down on Jingyu's body. Yin Feng did the same. The two gray wolves held Jingyu in their arms. Just like the countless times they were in the forest, they watched the sunrise and sunset together and endured the cold winter and hot summer together. Xiao Chen walked into the side chamber and saw this scene. The girl was sleeping soundly in the arms of the two gray wolves. Xiao Chen's expression softened slightly as he adjusted his heavy breathing and heartbeat. Only the heavens knew how panicked he was when he returned to the residence and saw the empty house. Xiao Chen gently walked towards Jingyu. The two gray wolves, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, suddenly opened their eyes and looked at Xiao Chen with vigilance. Xiao Chen paused his steps. They remembered Xiao Chen's scent. Even Jingyu's body was stained with Xiao Chen's scent. Silver Arrow whimpered and slowly moved its tail away. Silver Wind also moved its tail away reluctantly. Xiao Chen looked at the movements of the two gray wolves, and his eyes flashed slightly. Then he carefully stepped forward and squatted down to look at Jingyu's face, which was sleeping soundly. Xiao Chen's expression softened slightly. He gently touched Jingyu's cheek and carefully bent down to carry Jingyu. Jingyu frowned uncomfortably and leaned her head against Xiao Chen's chest to continue sleeping. Xiao Chen paused and looked at the two gray wolves on the ground. He smiled and turned to leave. Xiao Chen had just taken a step when he realized that Yin Jian was biting his lower hem. Xiao Chen frowned and lowered his head. Only then did he see that under Yin Jian's claws, there was a dark green bead strung together with a red string. The beautiful color stunned Xiao Chen. He lowered his head to look at Jingyu in his arms. He remembered that Jingyu always wore this bead around her neck. Why did she take it off? Xiao Chen carefully squatted down to pick up the bead and held it in his hand. He rubbed Yin Jian's head and stood up to leave. Yin Jian looked at Xiao Chen's back and the whiskers on the side of his mouth trembled slightly, as if he was very happy. He opened his mouth and continued to lie down with a sleepy face. Xiao Chen gently placed Jingyu on the bed. Jingyu turned over and went back to sleep without showing any signs of waking up. Xiao Chen let out a sigh of relief and turned to leave the room. He looked at Xing Er, who was standing at the door, and asked, "Tell this king everything clearly." Chapter 89. Xing Er trembled violently and told Xiao Chen everything that happened today. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and fell into deep thought. "Master, should we investigate the matter between Jing Lang and Jing Zhan?" Interrogation Officer 1 stood at the side and asked. "Go investigate what happened 14 years ago. At the same time, investigate the origin of this bead." Xiao Chen opened his palm and revealed the dark green bead. He looked at the two of them and said, "Yes." Xing Yi and Xing Er both bowed and acknowledged. Xiao Chen then turned around and returned to the room. He took off his outer clothes and laid down beside Jingyu and sighed. After a night of silence, Jingyu woke up and saw the familiar curtain above her head. She blinked and suddenly sat up. "Yin Xiao." Jingyu opened her mouth and shouted, This servant is here. Imperial concubine, you're awake?" Yin Xiao was startled by Jingyu's shout and hurriedly ran into the room. She looked at Jingyu and asked, "Why am I here?" Jingyu stared at Yin Xiao and said, "It was 9th Imperial Uncle who carried you back." Yin Xiao blinked her eyes and said, "Xiao Chen is back? Where is he?" Jingyu turned her head and looked at the slight mark of a pillow. She turned her head and asked Yin Xiao. The 9th Emperors said he had something to do. The moment the sun rose, the 9th Emperors left with Lord Xing. Yin Xiao bowed and said, "The 9th Emperors also told me to give this to you so that you won't lose it again." Yin Xiao said as she stretched out her hand. A dark green bead lay in her palm. Jingyu was slightly shocked. She raised her hand and touched her neck. Only then did she realize that her neck was empty. The bead on her neck was long gone. So I took it off yesterday and forgot to put it back on. Jingyu reached out and took the bead from Yin Xiao's hand. She sighed and carefully put it back on. She touched the bead and sighed, "Are we going to the academy today?" "Yes, Lord Xing Er is already waiting at the door." Yin Xiao lowered her head and said, So annoying. Why do we have to go to class? Jing Yu stood up angrily and walked to the dressing table at the side to sit down. Once the imperial concubine takes the exam and passes, you don't have to go to class. Yin Xiao looked at Jing Yu's angry face and smiled. There's an exam? Jing Yu's body shook violently when she heard this. She looked at Yin Xiao with a terrified expression. Yin Xiao gently combed Jing Yu's hair. She looked at Jing Yu in the mirror and said, "Of course. It's said that the exam this year is at the beginning of June. The instructor, Empress Dowager Hu, and the Empress will come. It will be a very grand occasion." My God, even the Empress Dowager is going. It's over. I'm going to die. Jing Yu was so scared that her face turned pale. She looked up at Yin Xiao and asked, "What if I don't pass the exam?" "Don't pass?" Yin Xiao's hand paused and said, "If you don't pass the exam, it will be very embarrassing. Not only will you be mocked, you will also have to return to the academy to train again and wait for the exam in the second half of next year. This cycle will continue until you pass the exam." Pooh, too cruel. Jing Yu wanted to cry but had no tears. She held her face and said with a frown, "Looks like I have to study hard this time. Otherwise, won't I be unable to leave the academy for the rest of my life? My God." Chapter 90. Yin Xiao dragged the dispirited Jing Yu to put on her clothes and hurriedly pushed Jing Yu out of the fu. Xing Er sat in the carriage as he drove the carriage. He stole a glance at Jing Yu's expression and found that Jing Yu didn't think anything was off. Only then did he slowly let out a sigh of relief. "Imperial Consort, this subordinate will be here to bring you back to the fu," Xing Er said as he watched Jing Yu get off the carriage and walk towards the academy. "Understood." Jing Yu calmly waved her hand to indicate that she understood. Only then did she walk into the academy that she had been waiting for a long time. "Jing Yu, you're finally here." The moment Jing Yu arrived, Shangguan Linglan and Ning Xiangyuan hurriedly came up to welcome her. They looked at Jing Yu up and down and said, "We wanted to go to the fu to see you, but we were chased out the moment we reached the fu." Ning Xiangyuan looked at Jing Yu with a wronged expression and said, "The fu's guards are so fierce, so scary." There's such a thing? See if I don't teach those people a lesson when I get back." Jing Yu was instantly enraged when she heard this. It wasn't easy for a friend to come to see her, but she was stopped and not allowed to enter? "Jing Yu, are you alright after you got back? You didn't get any internal injuries, right?" Shangguan Linglan pulled Jing Yu's hand and asked. "I'm fine, I'm full of energy." As Jing Yu spoke, she domineeringly waved her hand to indicate that she was completely fine. "Jing Yu, come here," Shangguan Linglan said as he pulled Jing Yu to the side. He looked at Jing Yu with a burning gaze and said, "How did you do it a few days ago in the Princess Royal's fu? I can clearly see that you don't have the strength to suppress the tiger, but why isn't the violent tiger moving?" Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglan seriously and said, "Well, it's very likely that the tiger is tired." "Jing Yu, I'm not joking with you." Anger appeared in Shangguan Linglan's eyes as she stared at Jing Yu and said, "Others say that Jing Lang subdued the tiger, but I can clearly see that it was you who tamed the tiger. Did you use some drug to make the beast listen to you?" This, you have to keep it a secret for me." Jing Yu coughed and looked at Shangguan Linglan. "Alright, go ahead." When Shangguan Linglan heard this, he immediately became alert. He looked around vigilantly and leaned over to Jing Yu. Shangguan Linglan blinked and looked at Jing Yu. "Actually, I didn't just drink wolf's milk when I grew up. I also drank tiger's milk, so that tiger probably treated me as one of its own." Jing Yu said this smoothly and looked at Shangguan Linglan with a look that said, "That's right? That's it?" Shangguan Linglan was slightly stunned and looked at Jing Yu as he asked, "That's it?" Jing Yu nodded firmly and said, "If you say it like that, it doesn't seem wrong." Shangguan Linglan frowned and fell into deep thought. Jing Yu saw that Shangguan Linglan was deep in thought and stuck out her tongue. If she didn't leave now, when would she? But I still feel that something is wrong. Where is she? Shangguan Linglan turned around and wanted to continue speaking, but he realized that Jing Yu, who was standing behind him, had already run far away. A look of helplessness flashed across his eyes. Why are you leaving so quickly? I haven't finished speaking. Shangguan Linglan hurriedly chased after her. Chapter 91. For the past few days, Jing Yu had been doing the same things as before. The only difference was that Jing Yu had suddenly become exceptionally diligent in class. This gave Shangguan Linglan a fright, and he even suspected that Jing Yu had been provoked. Jing Yu? Have you been provoked recently? In the afternoon, Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan would normally be leisurely sitting at the side drinking tea and eating snacks. However, today, only Shangguan Linglan was sitting while Jing Yu and Ning Xiangyuan were seriously practicing their walking. This gave Shangguan Linglan a fright. After holding it in for a long time, he finally couldn't hold it in any longer and walked up to Jing Yu and asked, "Me? No, I'm fine." Jing Yu blinked her eyes in confusion and said, "No matter how I look at you, you don't look fine." Shangguan Linglan walked around Jing Yu and said, "Hurry up and tell me the truth. Why have you been studying so hard recently? What provoked you? Could it be that the ninth emperors disliked you?" Shangguan Linglan looked at Jing Yu in horror and said. When Jing Yu heard this, she stumbled and almost fell. She looked at Shangguan Linglan speechlessly and said, "Which eye of yours saw me being disliked? I remember that there was a precedent for someone being thrown out of the carriage by the ninth emperors." Shangguan Linglan looked as if he had guessed correctly. Jing Yu gritted her teeth. Whenever this matter was brought up, she would feel anger, even though it had happened a long time ago. "Hurry up and tell me, did the ninth emperors dislike you? That's why you're working hard to learn etiquette and win the favor of the ninth emperors and capture his heart." Shangguan Linglan leaned closer to Jing Yu and said. Jing Yu's eyes suddenly widened and she gritted her teeth for a long time without saying a word. What a joke! She needed to win the favor of that man? Please, how could that be possible? You're so annoying, lower your voice. Jing Yu pulled Shangguan Linglan and said shyly. Her feminine appearance almost made Jing Yu vomit from disgust. Really? Shangguan Linglan was almost frightened by Jing Yu's sudden change. He looked at Jing Yu in horror and asked, "What did the ninth emperor say about you? Why did he provoke you so much?" "He said that I'm like a savage who doesn't have any manners and doesn't have any feminine charm. He said that I'm annoying and that he doesn't want to see me anymore." Jing Yu lowered her head and looked like she was about to cry. She was roaring in her heart. "He said that I'm as beautiful as a flower and that I'm too cute and that he can't bear to part with me." What? The ninth emperors actually said that about you? It's simply... Shangguan Linglan was instantly enraged when he heard this. He rolled up his sleeves and said, "Let's go and find him to reason things out." "You're so beautiful and have a straightforward personality. How could he belittle you like that?" You're flattering me." Jing Yu's heart was filled with joy. If she had a tail behind her at this moment, it would definitely be wagging happily at this moment. "No wonder you're studying so hard. No matter what, you have to make the ninth emperors see you in a different light." Shangguan Linglan patted Jing Yu's shoulder and said, "Jing Yu, I support you. From today onwards, I'll also study hard with you." Jing Yu was slightly stunned. She hadn't recovered from the sudden turn of events. Then, she saw Shangguan Linglan pulling Ning Xiangyuan aside as if he was going to a battlefield and discussing the right training methods to maximize the efficiency of her learning. Chapter 92. Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglan's analysis and her heart was filled with admiration. He was indeed a descendant of a military family. Look at each and every sentence. It was the quintessence of the quintessence. This analysis made Jing Yu start to doubt. Was learning etiquette really that difficult? Several days passed and Jing Yu hadn't seen Xiao Chen for a long time. Occasionally, when she woke up in the morning, she would find a faint warmth beside her, proving that Xiao Chen had come back to sleep. Jing Yu was already used to this and didn't even bother to ask. Today, classes ended early. Shangguan Linglan made a fuss about wanting to see Jing Yu's 2 wolves. Ning Xiangyuan said that she was very curious about the prince's residence and wanted to see it for herself. Jing Yu naturally didn't refuse and warmly invited the 2 of them into her residence. When they alighted from the carriage, Jing Yu arrogantly said to the guards standing at the entrance of the prince's residence, "Look carefully. In the future, when these 2 ladies visit, you are not allowed to stop them. Do you understand?" The group of guards looked at each other and finally said in unison, "Understood." When Jing Yu heard this, she nodded in satisfaction and led Shangguan Linglan and Ning Xiangyuan into the prince's residence. "Wow, how is this a prince's residence? It's more like a palace. It's so beautiful." Ning Xiangyuan looked at Jing Yu enviously and said, Yeah, it must be very comfortable for you to live here. It's so big you can go wherever you want." "It's too big. I still don't know the way." Jing Yu's face was slightly embarrassed. She had lived in this prince's residence for so long, but she could only remember 3 paths. The one to return to the lotus garden, the one to the study, and the last one to the kitchen. In order to solve her hunger problem as quickly as possible, Jing Yu had already figured out the location of the kitchen on the day she entered the prince's residence. She thought that she could grab something to eat in the middle of the night. "This is my courtyard," Jing Yu said as she led Shangguan Linglan and Ning Xiangyuan into the lotus garden. "What a beautiful lotus pond. It's like a fairyland." Ning Xiangyuan blinked her eyes and looked at the lotus pond. Her eyes were shining. "There's a boat over there. Do you want to take a ride?" Jing Yu asked with a smile. Sure. Everyone happily played around in the lotus pond. After that, Shangguan Linglan wanted to take a look at Jing Yu's 2 gray wolves. However, Ning Xiangyuan didn't want to see them no matter what. It was probably because she had been frightened by the Princess Royal's residence last time. Jing Yu naturally wanted to force her to take a look. She ordered Yin Xiao to take Ning Xiangyuan to walk around the prince's residence. Yin Xiao had only accompanied her for half a day when she was called away by a servant. She said that there was a problem with the imperial concubine's food that was prepared in the kitchen. Yin Xiao told Ning Xiangyuan to wait in place and that she would be back soon. Ning Xiangyuan nodded in agreement. She stood in place and waited for a while. Then she wanted to walk around and come back later. The flowers in this garden were exceptionally beautiful. It made Ning Xiangyuan want to play around. She took small steps and jumped on the stone steps. Ning Xiangyuan was about to jump forward when she suddenly saw a pair of man's shoes in front of her. She instantly jumped in fright and quickly steadied herself. She raised her eyes and looked over. After this glance, Ning Xiangyuan was stunned in place. She couldn't look away. "Who are you?" Xiao Chen's brows furrowed tightly. He looked at Ning Xiangyuan with a scrutinizing gaze. He didn't remember when there was another woman in his residence. She was now living under someone else's roof. Originally, it should have been fine to bring her friends into play when Xiao Chen wasn't around. However, why did Xiao Chen suddenly come back? Furthermore, he came back in such a timely manner. She was caught red-handed. Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu's lowered head. A trace of a smile flashed across his eyes as he said in a deep voice, "You brought outsiders into the residence without the permission of this king. Tell me, how is this king going to punish you?" Jing Yu panicked when she heard this. She thought about how to explain herself. However, when Jing Yu looked up and saw Xiao Chen's calm eyes, she lowered her hands silently and pouted. "I was wrong." Chapter 94. Xiao Chen frowned as if he hadn't heard her. "I was wrong. I won't bring anyone back to the residence in the future," Jing Yu said loudly with her eyes closed. Xiao Chen's face darkened when he heard this. So all his words were in vain. This woman was so stupid that she couldn't understand what he meant? When did this king tell you not to bring anyone back to the residence? Xiao Chen looked coldly at Jing Yu as he spoke. Jing Yu was stunned when she heard this. She blinked and looked at Xiao Chen with a confused expression. This king is the master of the residence. If you bring a friend back, shouldn't you be receiving this king at the same time? Do you still not have the slightest awareness of being the mistress of this residence? Xiao Chen's eyes were faintly filled with anger. Jing Yu finally understood. So Xiao Chen was angry at her for not telling him in advance so that he could be prepared. I thought you weren't home. Who told you not to tell me when you came back? Jing Yu pouted. She knew that Xiao Chen wasn't blaming her. She immediately became bolder. After standing for most of the day, she was already tired of standing. As she spoke, she walked to the soft couch and sat down next to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen watched as Jing Yu sat down to pour tea and drink water. He helplessly rubbed his forehead. It seemed that the training in the academy hadn't extinguished the wildness in Jing Yu's bones. This knowledge made Xiao Chen very happy. Don't do it again. Xiao Chen said indifferently. It wasn't clear if he was saying that he would tell Jing Yu in advance that he was coming back, or if he was saying that Jing Yu would warn him before bringing anyone back, or if Xiao Chen was actually saying both. Jing Yu excitedly told Xiao Chen everything that had happened over the past few days. It seemed to have become a habit of hers. Xiao Chen had only asked a question, but Jing Yu was able to talk endlessly. In the end, Jing Yu's mouth was dry from talking, but Xiao Chen only gave a few indifferent noises of acknowledgement. Am I being too long-winded? Jing Yu was slightly embarrassed. She blinked and asked Xiao Chen. No. Xiao Chen said with a serious expression. That's good. Jing Yu smiled contentedly. She turned to look at Xiao Chen and asked, after talking for so long, I forgot to ask. Why did you suddenly come back? I finished my business, so I naturally came back. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and said, So fast? Jing Yu sighed. She hadn't had enough of her carefree days yet. What? You don't want to see this king? Xiao Chen's face darkened as he stared at Jing Yu. I wouldn't dare. Jing Yu laughed dryly and stood up. I'm so hungry, let's go eat. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and nodded. Let's go together. Jing Yu looked up at Xiao Chen's height and silently mourned in her heart. When will he grow taller? After the meal, Jing Yu's appetite was very good. Even Xiao Chen's appetite was very good. Sitting together with Jing Yu, it was as if the food that Xiao Chen didn't have any special taste had become extraordinarily delicious. After the meal, Jing Yu didn't return to her room. Instead, she took a walk in the courtyard. Jing Yu originally thought that Xiao Chen would go to the study to deal with official business as usual. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen didn't go. Instead, he walked in the courtyard with Jing Yu. Chapter 95. Jing Yu blinked as she looked at Xiao Chen, who was walking beside her, and asked, Isn't it good to keep you company? Xiao Chen asked as he looked at Jing Yu. Cough cough. Don't talk like that, it's so mushy. Jing Yu rubbed her arms and turned to walk towards the pavilion in the middle of the pond. Jing Yu had asked someone to put a large lounge chair there, and it was perfect for lying down. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and looked at Jing Yu's figure as she ran over. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he strode over and picked up Jing Yu without hesitation. He sat down and let Jing Yu lean on his body. Jing Yu froze and wanted to move, but she was easily suppressed by Xiao Chen. Jing Yu had been with Xiao Chen for a long time, so she already knew his habits. For example, right now, the best choice was to not move. Otherwise, she would be the one to suffer. Jing Yu silently lowered her arms and gave up struggling. She leaned on Xiao Chen with a clear conscience. Xiao Chen raised his hand and played with Jing Yu's raised hand. The two were silent for a long time. Then Xiao Chen said, Today, Jing Zhan came looking for me. Jing Yu, who was originally leaning on Xiao Chen lazily, heard Xiao Chen's words and her entire body tensed up. Xiao Chen easily noticed this change in her movements. He raised his hand to hold Jing Yu's hand and said, If you don't want to see him, then don't. What did he say? Jing Yu slowly let out a few breaths to calm her heart and asked with her eyes closed. He wants you to give him a chance, Xiao Chen said calmly. He knows everything you said to Jing Lang. It doesn't matter. I don't want to see him. Jing Yu lowered her eyes and said, Please tell him that I don't want to have anything to do with him. Tell him not to appear in front of me. Xiao Chen's expression changed slightly. He looked at Jingyu, who had her head lowered, and his heart trembled. He raised his hand to cup Jingyu's cheek and looked at her seemingly calm face. He sighed and said, "Jingyu, you belong to me, Xiaochen. If you don't want to, then no one can force you. Remember." Xiaochen leaned over and planted a light kiss on Jingyu's forehead. Perhaps at this moment, even Xiaochen himself didn't know how gentle he was. Jingyu's heart was filled with warmth. In this strange world, this was the first time she felt this kind of warmth that could burn a person's heart. Jingyu lowered her eyes with a faint smile in her eyes. However, when she touched Xiaochen's light kiss, her heart was in chaos. "Of course I know." Jingyu suddenly stood up and said with a faint blush on her cheeks, I'm so sleepy. I'm going to sleep." She didn't give Xiaochen any time to react and ran away like a wisp of smoke. Seeing her fleeing figure, Xiaochen's eyes were filled with a faint smile. Jingyu turned around and closed the door behind her. She patted her burning cheeks and muttered, "Xiaochen, that bastard. Why did he say such emotional words?" Jingyu's face turned red again. She hurriedly ran to the bed and lay down on it without moving. Jingyu didn't know if Xiaochen slept in her room that night. In any case, when she woke up, she didn't see Xiaochen's figure and didn't bother to ask Yin Xiao. Anyway, Xiaochen was a busy man who always appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Chapter 96. Jingyu yawned as she entered the school. When she reached the entrance, she saw Ning Xiangyuan, who had just arrived. She immediately went up to greet her with a smile. Ning Xiangyuan affectionately chatted with Jingyu, but as she spoke, she couldn't help but look at the carriage behind Jingyu. "What's wrong?" Jingyu felt Ning Xiangyuan's gaze and turned around in confusion. Nothing. I just wanted to see if Lan Lan is here yet." Ning Xiangyuan's eyes flashed with panic, and she quickly looked down with a smile. "She always comes quite early, so she should be inside already. Let's go in." Jingyu didn't think there was anything wrong, so she casually replied and pulled Ning Xiangyuan into the school. As expected, Shangguan Linglan was already inside. "Jingyu, come quickly." Shangguan Linglan also saw Jingyu and Ning Xiangyuan. He waved at them and happily said, "Do you know what we're learning today?" "What are we learning?" "As long as it's not about kneeling, anything is fine," Jingyu said as she rolled her eyes. "I just heard Countess Xiling say that we're learning how to eat today," Shangguan Linglan said with a wink. "We're learning how to eat?" Jingyu spat out blood and stared at Shangguan Linglan with wide eyes. Shangguan Linglan pulled Jingyu aside and said, "There are a lot of banquets and etiquette, so this is probably what we're learning." "Then, does that mean we can eat and drink for free?" Jingyu's eyes turned slightly, and her eyes revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Thinking about how she could eat for free at school was simply a dream come true. She wondered if she could learn how to sleep. She was very willing to learn. However, when Jingyu walked into the school with this thought in mind, she was instantly petrified. She stared at the empty plates in front of her, and the corner of her mouth twitched. This was the legendary free meal? Jingyu's eyes widened as she looked at the empty plates on the table and the words on them. It was really simple. If you just put a note on it and wrote fish, then the dish was fish. If you put a note on it, then it was chicken. Jingyu closed her eyes fiercely. After this lesson, Jingyu didn't remember anything at all. Her mind was filled with thoughts of what to eat after class. She held on to this thought with all her might and finally held on until school was over. "I can't." Jingyu pulled Shangguan Linglan with one hand and Ning Xiangyuan with the other and said, "This lady is about to die from hunger. Let's go and eat." "Jingyu, slow down." Ning Xiangyuan struggled to keep up with Jingyu, while Shangguan Linglan looked even more anxious than Jingyu. He strode over to Jingyu and said, "Let's not sit in a carriage, let's ride a horse." "Big sister, this is the main street. You'll be caught if you ride a horse." Jingyu stepped out of the school gates and almost tripped over the threshold when she heard Shangguan Linglan's words. "I am Shangguan Linglan. Who dares to catch me?" Shangguan Linglan arrogantly raised his eyebrows and said, if he still wants to stay in the imperial city, he wouldn't be so stupid as to provoke the general's residence. He has a strong background, but I don't like trouble. So, let's just sit in the carriage obediently. Jing Yu said as she pushed Shangguan Linglong onto her carriage. She reached out to grab Ning Xiangyuan, but she avoided her. Chapter 97. Ning Xiangyuan smiled and looked at Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglong as she said, "You guys go ahead. I still have something to do at home, so I won't go with you guys." Okay then. Jing Yu was slightly stunned. She patted Ning Xiangyuan's shoulder and said, "Let's go together next time. If you have something to do, you can go back first." Ning Xiangyuan smiled gently and looked at Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglong. She turned and got into her carriage. Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglong drove the carriage to the street. Shanghai Linglong looked at Jing Yu with a frown and said, "Jing Yu, did you notice something wrong with Yuan today? I looked at her for a long time and noticed that she was absent-minded the whole day." "Now that you mention it, I think so too." Jing Yu frowned and said, "Could it be that her father encountered some trouble in the officialdom? I'm not sure. I'll ask tomorrow. If I can help, I'll help," Shangguan Linglong said with a frown. "We'll see." Jing Yu waved her hand and looked at Shangguan Linglong and said, "Have you thought about where to eat?" "The splendid feast house." Shangguan Linglong pointed and said resolutely. Jing Yu paused and looked at Shangguan Linglong and said, "But did you bring enough money?" "I don't know if it's enough. My brother always paid for us to go to Jinyan restaurant." Shangguan Linglong was slightly stunned. He took out a roll of banknotes from his pouch and handed it to Jing Yu. He asked, "Is this enough?" "I don't know." Jing Yu spread her hands. She still didn't understand what banknotes meant in ancient times and how goods were exchanged. "I don't care. If it's not enough, I have more here." Jing Yu waved her hand impatiently and said, "If it's not enough, I'll call Xiao Chun to pay the bills." So domineering. When Shangguan Linglong heard this, she immediately gave Jing Yu a thumbs up. The meaning of this gesture was told to her by Jing Yu. She realized that when she was with Jing Yu, she would always discover many interesting things. Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglong drove to the Jinyan restaurant. They waved their hands and asked for a private room. They ordered a table full of dishes and sat inside. Suddenly they felt like a big boss. This feeling made Jing Yu inexplicably enjoy. Back then she had also stood at the top of the world. Of course, it was only for one night. The dishes are served. While Jing Yu was reminiscing, Shangguan Linglong, who was sitting on the floor, was already impatient. When he saw the dishes, his eyes lit up like a hungry wolf. However, he didn't dare to eat because the person serving the dishes was still here. Jing Yu looked at the plate of chicken. She didn't care about anything else and reached out to grab it. The manservant who was carrying the dish widened his eyes in astonishment. Seeing Jing Yu's unscrupulous action of tearing the chicken apart, he was simply dumbfounded. This crude action simply did not match Jing Yu's fine clothes at all. "Jing Yu, you're cheating." Shangguan Linglong couldn't take it anymore. He rushed to the table and tried to snatch the food from Jing Yu. Two beautiful women who looked dignified, but they only looked dignified. They ate heartily at the dining table. The servant who was carrying the dishes was stunned for a long time before he remembered to put down the dishes and left the room. His eyes were full of surprise. He couldn't help but wonder if these two people were pretending to be rich people, or if they actually stole the clothes they were wearing. Jing Yu widened her eyes and looked at the woman in front of her who was wearing a delicate pink dress. "Who is this person? Why haven't I seen her before? Hey, you two get out of here immediately. This princess has taken a fancy to this room." The woman called Princess Leong looked at Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglong with disdain and said, "Innkeeper, your Jinyan restaurant has such a rule?" Jing Yu blinked and looked past Princess Leong. She looked at the innkeeper behind her and said, "Didn't you say that your Jinyan restaurant is very famous? Is this how you treat your distinguished guests?" What a joke. What kind of distinguished guests are you? Princess Leong was immediately unhappy. She looked at Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglong with disdain and Jing Yu's face turned cold. She was actually looked down upon and looked down upon. Chapter 99. This was simply intolerable. The rich ones are the lords. Jingyu waved her hand and arrogantly sat on the soft chair. She squinted her eyes at Princess Leong and said, "I will sit here first. What right do you have to ask me to give way? How dare you? Do you know who I am?" Princess Leong looked at Jingyu's arrogant manner and was so angry that her face turned green. She had finally left the palace and did not expect that someone would dare to not respect her. She immediately lost her temper. "I know, you are Princess Leong." Jingyu blinked her eyes indifferently and said, "Isn't it just a princess? It's not like I haven't seen you before. How dare you insult the imperial family?" Princess Leong glared at Jingyu and said loudly, "Do you believe that I will give the order to kill you? You are just a girl and you are always shouting about fighting and killing. I don't think you are a princess. You are more like a hooligan on the streets." Jingyu disdainfully raised the corner of her mouth and said, "Besides, you don't believe in Shao. What kind of imperial family are you?" Princess Leong was speechless after hearing Jingyu's words. No one had ever dared to talk to her like this. Everyone who heard her name would avoid her. Who would have thought that she would meet someone like Jingyu today? "Let's not talk nonsense. You want this house, right?" Jingyu slightly raised her eyebrows and said, "Yes, what do you want me to do for you to leave?" Princess Leong slightly took a deep breath and said, "Since this is a place to eat, drink, and spend money, then it is easy to talk. Whoever has more money gets to talk." Jingyu looked at Princess Leong and said with a smile. When Shangguan Linglan heard Jingyu's words, he immediately widened his eyes in horror. He touched the pouch on his waist and swallowed his saliva. This was the first time he met someone who had more money than him, huh? Princess Leong looked at Jingyu from head to toe as if she had heard something ridiculous. It was as if she was examining a fool. However, Jingyu looked at Princess Leong calmly. "You said that you want to compete with me in terms of wealth?" Princess Leong looked at Jingyu and asked. Jingyu nodded seriously and said, "You don't have to say anything. The amount of money you can take out right now is more than what we have. We will definitely pack up and leave immediately. We will respectfully call you princess." "No problem." When Princess Leong heard this, she immediately agreed without any hesitation. "If you lose, then I won't make things difficult for you. Just stand in the main hall of the Jinyan Pavilion and shout, 'I'm an idiot,' 3 times. Jingyu smiled as she looked at Princess Leong. "What, you, do you dare to compete?" Jingyu raised her hand and interrupted Princess Leong. She raised her eyebrows and looked at Princess Leong provocatively. "Let's compete. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Princess Leong was infuriated by Jingyu's provocative tone and immediately agreed. Jingyu stood up and said, "I'll compete with her. You and the people behind you. Let's compete with the amount of money we have. Take out the money for this princess." Princess Leong raised her chin and shouted loudly. The guards behind her all took out their purses and poured the money on the table. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan looked at the money and banknotes. They opened their eyes wide and didn't know why they suddenly felt guilty. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan looked at each other. They looked at the pile of money with a strange expression. Chapter 100. It's gold. Jingyu looked at the glistening gold and her eyes almost fell out. Gold was very valuable and could not be compared to RMB in the modern era. "What should we do? We don't seem to have any gold." Jingyu looked at Shangguan Linglan and said with a crying face, "We don't have any gold." Shangguan Linglan blinked and looked at the gold. "Hey, don't tell me you don't have any money?" Princess Leong looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan's eyes shining as they looked at the pile of silver. It was obvious that they had not seen the world and she immediately laughed in disdain. Who said we don't have any?" Jingyu straightened her body. Her attempt to hide it made the surrounding people look at her strangely. "If you have it, then take it out." Princess Leong sneered and looked at Jingyu. Her face was full of complacency as she looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan as if they were going to win. Cough cough. Jingyu touched Shangguan Linglan and signaled him to take out the banknotes. Shangguan Linglan looked at Jingyu helplessly and silently prepared himself to lose face with Jingyu. He suddenly stood up and took out his purse. Under the astonished eyes of the crowd, he took out a thick stack of banknotes and slammed it on the table. He said in a domineering manner, "I didn't bring much. It's all here." Shangguan Linglan silently said in his heart. No matter what, he could not lose his imposing manner. The surrounding people sucked in a breath of cold air. They did not expect Shangguan Linglan to be so generous and throw out banknotes. Looking at the amount on the banknotes, it was 10,000 taels. Then why did the two of them look so scared just now? Everyone felt dizzy. How could he scare them like that? I have less than her. Jingyu looked at the banknotes that Shangguan Linglan threw out and was speechless. His posture was handsome. When everyone heard Jingyu's words, they turned their heads to Jingyu. They all stared at Jingyu as she took out the banknotes from her belt. Everyone's gaze was also on Jingyu's hand. There's some here. Jingyu threw out a roll of banknotes and put her hand into her sleeve. She silently threw out another roll of banknotes and said, "There's some here. Oh, well, there's some here, and here." Everyone looked at the banknotes that Jingyu kept throwing out. Their hearts trembled and their eyes widened. They watched as Jingyu touched the banknotes up and down. She looked at the crowd and said awkwardly, "I think there's no more." A chuckle came and completely woke everyone up. Everyone looked over and saw a young master standing outside. Wasn't that Fang Zicheng? Sorry, I couldn't help it. Fang Zicheng's face was full of smiles. He coughed and waved his hand at the crowd and said, "I'm just here to watch the fun." But Fang Zicheng paused and pointed at the banknotes that were thrown on the table and said, "It looks like the winner has been decided? I don't even need to count?" Jingyu was stunned and said quietly, "If I knew, I would have brought more." "If you brought more, you could have bought the entire Jinyan restaurant, not to mention this small private room." Fang Zicheng's eyes were full of smiles as he pointed at the banknotes on the table and said, Chapter 101. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were slightly stunned. They blinked their eyes and looked at the banknotes on the table and said, "So, we won?" "Obviously." Fang Zicheng spread his hands and said, "Ha." Jingyu instantly laughed out loud. She changed her timid appearance and stood on the chair aggressively. She looked down at Princess Leong and said, "How is it? Do you admit defeat?" Princess Leong's face turned red. She looked at Jingyu and couldn't say anything for a long time. "Let me tell everyone this. Don't look down on others." Jingyu raised her chin and looked down at Princess Leong. She said, "If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. Shouldn't Princess Leong fulfill the bet? If you want to break the bet, it's fine. Anyway, there are so many people watching. I don't care." Jingyu spread her hands proudly. Princess Leong was so angry that she almost cried. A sense of humiliation came from the bottom of her heart. Princess Leong bit her lips and walked out of the private room without saying a word. She walked to the stage in the hall and looked at the pairs of mocking eyes below. Her eyes were filled with tears. "I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot. Remember this, I won't let you go." Princess Leong glared at Jingyu fiercely. She didn't dare to stay for a second longer. She hurriedly ran down the stage and left. "Tsk. Your courage is commendable." Jingyu's eyes were filled with admiration. She wasn't moved by Princess Leong's threat at all. She seems to have forgotten to take the money. Jingyu blinked her eyes. She suddenly thought of something and her eyes lit up. She said, "Does this mean that the money belongs to me?" Cough cough. "You guys made a bet. The money should belong to you." Fang Zicheng looked at Jingyu's greedy look. She didn't hide it at all and was clearly displayed. He didn't hate her at all. Instead, he felt that she was very sincere. "Wah, that's great. I've struck it rich." Jingyu immediately cheered. She extravagantly called the shopkeeper over to settle the bill for the private room. When the bill was settled, Jingyu suddenly looked at the shopkeeper with a serious expression and asked, "This? Is the silver note or the gold more valuable?" When the shopkeeper heard this, his hand trembled and he dialed the wrong number. He raised his head and looked at Jingyu in horror. Then, he turned to look at Shangguan Linglong, who had a curious expression on his face. His entire body trembled. What kind of monster had he seen today? Not only did he dare to offend the princess, but he could also casually throw out tens of millions of taels of silver. And now, he was actually asking him which was more valuable, silver notes or gold. Could these two things be compared? Could he? Could it? We won't pay the bill. Ladies, this meal is on the house. You're welcome to come again. The shopkeeper tried his best to steady his breathing. He swallowed his saliva and looked at the two. "This is a gift from my Jinyan pavilion, please accept it." Jingyu and Shangguan Linglong both blinked and looked at the two dark green rings the shopkeeper gave them. They suddenly blinked in surprise. There was a gift for a meal? Jinyan Pavilion actually gave out identity rings? Fang Zicheng's eyes widened in surprise. He looked at the ring in Jingyu's hand and said with envy, "I don't have one, but you actually have one." Chapter 102. What is this? Jingyu tried it on and found that it fit best on her index finger. She immediately nodded in satisfaction. "From now on, you two will be my Jinyan restaurant's honored guests. If you need anything, just let me know." The shopkeeper said with a smile and turned to leave. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglong both laughed. Jingyu suddenly stopped and rushed to the door, shouting at the shopkeeper, "Is there a discount for eating?" The shopkeeper was coming down the stairs when he heard Jingyu's shout. He staggered and almost fell down the stairs. He turned around and said angrily, "It's free. All free." Jingyu was slightly surprised when she heard this. She immediately cheered and held the ring in her hand like it was a treasure. She said with a smile, "This is my rice bowl, I can't lose it. This thing is actually so useful." Shangguan Linglong tossed the ring in his hand and put it on his middle finger. The two looked at each other and began to divide the money on the table. After dividing the money, they suddenly realized a very important problem. They didn't have anything to put it in. Just as Jingyu and Shangguan Linglong were in a dilemma, Jinyan Restaurant actually sent a small box for the two of them to put the money in. Jingyu was immediately convinced by the service and exclaimed, "What a good place. By the way, why are you here?" Jingyu put away her money and turned to look at Fang Zicheng, who was still waiting at the side, and asked, "I just happened to pass by." Fang Zicheng was slightly surprised and said with a smile, "Who are you trying to fool?" Jingyu rolled her eyes disdainfully and said, "I think you've asked some young lady to come to the Jinyan Restaurant for a date. Even if I have an appointment, it would be with you." Fang Zicheng laughed and said the last sentence without thinking. Suddenly, the room fell into a strange atmosphere. Shangguan Linglong silently turned his head and pretended that he didn't hear anything. "I was joking." Fang Zicheng coughed and said, "What do you plan to do with Princess Leong?" "What's wrong with her?" Jingyu blinked her eyes, looking confused. "You have offended Princess Leong. Imperial concubine Fu will definitely not let it go." Fang Zicheng looked at Jingyu's confused face and said helplessly, "Did this woman not know that she had caused a lot of trouble?" Jingyu suddenly jumped up and looked at Fang Zicheng in horror and said, "Could it be that Princess Leong is Imperial concubine Fu's illegitimate daughter?" Shangguan Linglong, who was drinking tea, spat it all over the table and looked at Jingyu in horror. He couldn't imagine what Jingyu was thinking when she said that. Fang Zicheng was also shocked by Jingyu and was speechless for a long time. "Could it be I said something wrong?" Jingyu blinked and asked in confusion. "Jingyu, did you take the wrong medicine? Or did you have a mental problem in the past?" Shangguan Linglong looked at Jingyu seriously and asked, "You are the one who took the wrong medicine." "I didn't take any medicine." Jingyu glared at Shangguan Linglong angrily and said. She was speechless and said, "No. I don't need to take medicine, I am not sick. I am confused by your words." Princess Leong is Imperial Concubine Fu's younger sister, the second daughter of the Grand Preceptor. Fang Zicheng really didn't want to go anymore and rubbed his temples. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.